Another name has emerged in the Penguins coaching search, and it's not as good as Mitch Love. Pat and I are going to discuss that right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at SendInForWet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So it's funny, Pat, we finish up our episode on Mitch Love on Wednesday. Right after we finish recording, David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reports that the Penguins have also interviewed DJ Smith. At the time, I'm like, should we go back to record this? But I'm like, nah, let's just save this for Thursday. It's a little bit slow right now anyway, mid-May. The playoffs are still going around, but there's not too much regarding the Penguins. So we figured we would save this for today. So with that, again, David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reported on Wednesday that the Penguins have interviewed former Ottawa Senators head coach DJ Smith. So he was the former head coach from 2019-20 until partway through the 23-24 season. He was there for basically 4.5 seasons and really didn't do that good of a job. Here's where the Senators finished in their respective division at throughout his time there. 7th, 6th, 7th again, 6th again, and then 7th. They were at the bottom of their division every single year that he was the head coach. And towards the late stages of his tenure, they started to have playoff expectations. I mean, they definitely had playoff expectations this year, and credit to the Senators. They finally broke through and made the playoffs. But even last year, this was a team that was expected to take a step, and they never did. Like, he was fired after 26 games last season when they were 11-15. So I get it. They're looking for someone who at least has some NHL coaching experience here as a head coach. But for me, I'll pass. I'm not really that interested in him at this juncture. I think you can find other coaches who may not have NHL head coaching experience, but are ready for this type of role. Again, what I saw from him in Ottawa, I don't think is really going to be a lot different here, where he's just going to turn the page and have this team be a lot better than expected. I think they should go in a different direction. Again, only one report, Pat, but I'm good. I'll pass.
It's very similar to me in a way that I looked at Rick Tocchet, to where I said he was a part of a lot of dysfunction. I said this with Tocchet. You look at where he's been, the Coyotes, then the Canucks, and we saw what a tire fire the Canucks devolved into the last 2 years. You look at DJ Smith, and he was part of the last years of, not to speak ill of the dead, Eugene Melnyk owning the Senators. Yeah. And that team was, by all reporting, a complete mess. And you don't know how much you can put on DJ Smith's shoulders. The thing I will say, though, on the opposite side of it, is that this is the Senators were in a spot, in a way, to where the Penguins are right now. They were moving on from a different era, post Erik Karlsson, post Jason Spezza, post a few guys, and they were going to have to reset. And you brought up where they finished in the standings. There wasn't a lot of progress. And it wasn't just that, oh, okay, this is a team on the rise. Sometimes you're in a tough division, and when you're on a rise, you kind of go from last to first or last to the top 3. That never really happened. You didn't see a lot of progress with these players. They all kind of plateaued at a certain way. And now you look at Ottawa, and they're right back in the mix. They look like a team that is going to be on the rise for quite a few years now. So on one hand, I'm fine with, I'm definitely in the pass category on this. On the other, I look at it as he was the head coach of a pretty dysfunctional organization at the time. And that's always the first person to go when things like that happen. The thing I wanted to kind of toss to you about, Hunter, is we've seen a lot of second chance coaches, the guy who starts in one place, doesn't work out, but then goes to another and figures it out. I'm skeptical, but if it does come down to Smith, do you think that could be this situation?
There's always a chance, but I don't think it's going to be like what's the word I'm looking for here? Maybe like a Paul Maurice situation in Florida. Because remember before Paul Maurice went to Florida, he was fine, but he didn't he's turned this team into a juggernaut, and this team looks like they might go back to their third straight Stanley Cup final. And that was one of the most meh hires you could ever say. Like, it was just kind of like, meh, like, oh, you're hiring Paul Maurice to coach your team. Couldn't have done any better. And then he just laughs in everyone's faces. He's taken the Panthers to 2 straight Cup finals. They've won one of them, and they might go back to a third straight one because this team is a juggernaut right now. So there's always a slim chance of that happening, but it's low. I don't think you're going to see that happen here. I will say this as well when it comes to DJ Smith. Kyle Dubas is familiar with him. He was an assistant coach with the Maple Leafs when Dubas was there. So to me, this also could be like a courtesy interview, like, hey, you've done good work throughout your NHL coaching career. We're going to give you an interview here. Impress me. Just kind of that stuff. And maybe he's not a finalist, something like that. But Kyle Dubas is familiar with him. Right now, by the way, DJ Smith, he is on the Kings staff right now with Jim Hiller. He was hired as an assistant, and right now he is the associate coach for the Kings. But again, he was with the Maple Leafs starting in 15-16 as an assistant, went through 18-19 as an assistant before being hired as Ottawa's head coach in 19-20. And, Travis Green, he took over that Ottawa Senators team after DJ Smith got let go. He turned them into a playoff team this year, and they pushed Toronto at least to a 6-game after being down 3-0 in that series. But again, I think they can do better here. It's the same thing kind of like Drew Bannister, Pat, like what you mentioned, like with a second chance. Bannister didn't do a good job with the St. Louis Blues. He gets fired. Jim Montgomery comes in. He turns that team into a bona fide playoff team. And let's be real, they probably should have won that series against the Winnipeg Jets. They were less than 2 minutes away from going to the second round to play the Dallas Stars. But it's kind of in that same logic. There's a slim chance that a coach like that can turn around in their second tenure. But would I be the one making that risk? No, I wouldn't want to.
Probably not. And I will say the Bannister thing, that's the other side of it for me, is because his name has been floated. Yeah. It hasn't been reported that he's been interviewed or that he's even really in the mix, but there has been talk that there might be interest. That's the other side of the coin for me, because St. Louis is a pretty middle of the road franchise. They don't constantly impress, but they're stable. You don't hear about bad ownership. You don't hear about you definitely don't hear about bad management. Doug Armstrong's a killer. He's one of the best in the business. But Bannister goes out, and all of a sudden this team figures it out and turns it around. So that tells me a lot more about Drew Bannister than, say, your DJ Smiths, who were with a team that was just in complete disarray. The one thing I will say in his favor, though, is it fits the mold of what they're looking for when you just go down the checklist, because he was very successful as a coach in the OHL with the Oshawa Generals, did very well, won a lot of games, won a Memorial Cup in his third season. So the work with younger players, that's there. He has proven he can do that. He also, the other thing that I do think works in his favor, and this is where I'll leave it on DJ Smith, is when he was an assistant coach with the Maple Leafs, that's when, regardless, and we're going to talk about them later in the show, regardless what you think about the Maple Leafs right now, he was pretty instrumental in developing those young three in Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. And again, regardless of what they're doing in the playoffs, they did develop into pretty phenomenal players. So there are pros and cons. He's not high on my list, but if, say, a Mitch Love passes, somebody else does as well, there are worse coaches out there that you could end up with.
Yeah, for me, he's pretty far down my list. I think the top 3 to 4 finalists on my list would have to say no. But again, I'm just a guy on a podcast with a microphone in front of my face, so I'm not Kyle Dubas. But for me, Mitch Love, very good candidate. DJ Smith, Drew Bannister, not so good for me, and I know for you as well. But I think that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to continue our season in review series with goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic. Before we get to that, though, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have way more ways than ever to play smart and win big. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dampin. Pat, it was another so-so season for Alex Nedeljkovic. He had some good moments, some bad moments, and then some stuff all in between. He finished the season with a 14-15-5 record, 3.12 goals against average, .894 save percentage. He was 57th in the league in goal saved above expected with -1. So kind of for Ned this year. He had a really good stretch right around the end of January into early February where he was giving the Penguins some really good starts. I mean, we were talking about this on the show at the time. It started in Buffalo where he was .952. Then he played LA. He was .962. He had the game against the Sharks where he was .929. He had the game against Utah, which is now the Mammoth, .931. Then he had a shutout against the Predators. And then he had that crazy start against the Rangers, .917. But then right after that, Patty has 3 really bad starts in a row, .615, .842, .786 save percentage, respectfully. You know, he has 2 at least okay starts to end the season, especially against Washington, 5-2 win, .900 save percentage. He has that .933 save percentage against the Chicago Blackhawks, but still a lot of a mixed bag this year. If I had to give a grade for him, C- around there, kind of a D range. I still feel like looking back at that contract that was signed, you probably didn't have to give him that 2-year term. I think you probably just could have rolled with Yoel Blomqvist coming into the year with Tristan Jarry and had him be the backup. Yeah, I know Blomqvist struggled in his second stint in the NHL, but this is still someone right now that is blocking some of these younger goaltenders going into next season. And I still will maintain my take that I had when we discussed Tristan Jarry. I think the Penguins have to find a way to move on from one of these 2 goaltenders during the offseason. Both, I think I would be fine with that too, but I think you got to get rid of one of them at this rate. Ned, though, he kind of is who he is at this rate, below average goalie who will give you some good starts, but also a lot of starts where you're kind of itching for more.
I'll just give my grade right off the jump. I'm just going to give him a straight middle of the road C, because I look at Alex Nedeljkovic and I look at him not so much as a Penguins goalie as I do just a goalie in the NHL. And hear me out on this. If he was on a contending team, I think he would be better, because you look at the way he played. You went through that stretch in early 2024 where he gave the Penguins a chance. And if he's on a team with a reliable starting goaltender where you can use him as a way to rest and reset your starting caliber goaltender, he's a great security blanket to have, to where you can start him every 5th or 6th game to make sure that your starter does not get worn down. But the minute he has to start taking over starter duties, he starts to fall apart. We've seen it the last 2 years. He'll go on a heater for a couple of weeks and then fall off of a cliff. Mm-hmm. But if he was on a team where there was a legitimate starting goaltender, great value to have. I agree on the whole that they got to move on from these guys. What I disagree with you on, though, is the Blomqvist part of it, because that's when I'm going to start bringing this into the Penguins specifically, is they want Yoel Blomqvist to become a starting goaltender in the organization. And if you would have had him right out of the jump, injuries notwithstanding, as the Penguins' backup, it's going to blunt his development. So they wanted him to play in Wilkes-Barre and play meaningful hockey, get the lion's share of the start. Now, obviously, some of that changed because of the emergence of Sergei Murashov, but they didn't want to have him play behind a bad defensive team that wasn't going anywhere. They wanted him to learn how to be the guy. Now, circumstances dictated he had to get some NHL action. He faltered in the second half of it, but that's part of the development process. You want to see where he is and see what he needs to get done. And I know people were upset that Jari came back up, but you're looking long-term with Blomqvist. You're trying to find a way to get rid of these two goaltenders. So at the end of the day, I think, and this is the question I want to pose to you, Hunter, is I know that we want them to move on from both goalies to open up the market for these young guys to take the next step. But I do think the easier of the two to move on from is going to be Alex Nedeljkovic, because easy to move contract. Jari, on the other hand, complete boat anchor. So I've liked his body of work for the most part as a Penguin. There's those falterings in there, but I do think if you're looking at one of the two, the one you have to move on from is obviously Alex Nedeljkovic, right?
Yeah, he's the easier one just because when you look at the contract, a team will be able to absorb that fairly easily. Obviously, with Jari's, there's a lot of money, and B, still a lot of term on that contract. So I think a lot of teams are going to be like, nope, even with the cap going up, we still don't want anything to do with that contract. And he kind of is also what he is at this point in his career. I will say this about Ned too. He does command a lot of respect in that locker room. I remember I was at the game when he stormed off the ice. He threw his stick and he slammed the door and barked at the whole team to wake the hell up because he got pulled. And to their credit, they did wake up. That was that game against the Flyers. And again, you can tell how well liked he is in the locker room. You can tell that a lot of the players respect him as a leader. And he really does seem like a great dude, both on and off the ice. Like the interviews that he's had, all those moments, like he's very easy to root for. Stinks that he's a Cleveland Browns fan, but you know what? That's a different discussion.
He's a great vibes guy. At the end of the day, he is a great vibes guy.
100%.
And it's a drum I'll continue to beat until this team starts to make the turn into being a contender again. Over the next few years, you are going to need great vibes guys, because you do not want the locker room or the culture of the organization to spiral into any sort of toxicity. And sometimes you just need that golden retriever in the locker room who he could spill his coffee in the morning. He could be crossing the street into the UPMC sports complex and the car passing by can hit a puddle and he can get covered in water. And then he can step in a wet part of the locker room in his socks and nothing's going to bother him. So you're going to need some of those vibes guys, but they're going to have to identify others, because as much as I like Ned's work, they're eventually going to have to start making room for the young guys. And an easy way to do that is to move on from Alex Nedeljkovic.
Yeah. And then again, they'll probably have to figure out a way at some point to move on from Tristan Jarry, even though, again, that contract is also really bad as well. The free agent market for goalies this year, not great, not good. I think for teams that are looking for new goalies, it's going to have to be via the trade market. And hey, maybe that will benefit the Penguins, especially for someone like Ned, who, again, his contract is pretty absorbable, only has a year left on it. But I think that will do it for the second segment of today's show. Again, I didn't want to come off as too harsh on Ned. He just kind of is what he is at this point. I give him around a C- grade for this past year. Had some really good starts, went on that heater, but as a whole, he just leaves you wanting a little bit more. And
wrong place, wrong time. I think if he's on a better team, he has a better outcome. But the Penguins, it's wrong place, wrong time for him.
At best, he's just remember to edit that. Sorry. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. At best, he's a 1B, but in a perfect world, it's probably just a backup to a better starter in this league. But I think that will do it for the second segment. Coming up to end the show, we got to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs and how especially Toronto is very down bad, and how Pat got absolutely worked by that Oilers prediction with the Vegas Golden Knights. I also got worked a little bit as well. We're going to discuss that right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dampin. Pat, we can start with any of these series, but let's just throw that pie in your face for picking the Vegas Golden Knights to absolutely stomp the Edmonton Oilers. And they told you to absolutely shove that where the sun doesn't shine. And hey, I'll admit, man, I took the Knights in 6. I thought it would be like it was 2 years ago where Vegas would shut down Edmonton. Aiden Hill would outplay Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard, but none of that happened. The Oilers' depth really shined. I mean, Trent Frederick was really good. Evander Kane was good. You had Matthias Janmark having a good series. Connor Brown had a good series. Kasperi Kapanen, of all people, got a goal. And hey, former Penguins this week, man. We got Kasperi Kapanen in the game-winning goal. Mikhail Granlund gets a hat trick. Dmitry Kulikov gets a goal for the Panthers. 22-23 Penguins are just heroes right now, man. Truly.
But, okay, so we're going to toss the revisionist history of the former Penguins because let's be honest, they didn't fit here. It's fun to look at hindsight and say, why are they doing that here? Because they didn't fit here. That's why. But the thing I will say about my Vegas take is they addressed the thing that I said was going to doom them. I said in the first round, they won on the backs of LA beating themselves and Connor and Leon just lifting the entire weight of the planet on their back and saying, we are not losing this series. And everybody else was a passenger. They flipped all of that against Vegas. They got, like you said, solid goaltending. Their depth really filled in when needed. And if you have that combination, you're in good shape. So I was looking at the series as this is how Edmonton was coming into it, and Vegas is Vegas. Edmonton flipped the script, man, and all the props in the world to them for that, because I kept saying the way they were playing in the first round until they flipped it, they were playing with fire, and they took a big old fire extinguisher and said, yeah, we're going to get rid of that real quick, because if we're serious about being contenders, everybody else has to show up, and boy, did they ever.
100%. I mean, they got contributions from everyone in that series. McDavid and Draisaitl are great. Bouchard was really good. They got back-to-back shutouts from Stuart Skinner. If you get shut out back-to-back times by Stuart Skinner, you should forfeit your entire next season. But hey, shout out to him. He played really well in those 2 games. In all seriousness, I can make jokes all I want about Stuart Skinner and how bad he was against the Kings. He answered the call when he was put back in due to injury with Cal Pickard, and he was very good. In Edmonton now, back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and they are looking like the team to beat in this conference right now. I picked Vegas to come out of that series in 6 games. Jack Eichel did everything in his power to will the team to a win in that series, but it wasn't close enough. Mark Stone wasn't hurt. I will say this about Vegas, though. That front office and that ownership group, they are going to be pissed this summer. They will not take this lightly. They operate like an NBA team. They are going to be very aggressive. Don't be surprised if they are in on Mitch Marner, by the way, on July 1. As for the Maple Leafs, yeah, that sure happened on Wednesday. Jerseys being thrown on the ice. Steve Dangle doing a Batman reference with Bane on his live stream, just screaming into the void. We got to get a wellness check on him if they lose this series. But that was an embarrassing effort in Game 5 in your home building. None of the core 4 played well, and they are staring down the potential final game of that era in Sunrise. I said it on the national show today with my good friend Nick Soares. I'll say it here. When you have a champion pinned down on the mat like that, you need to deliver the kill shot. And they didn't. They let them get up, get off the mat, reset, and that's the biggest mistake they ever made. You're up 2-0 in the series, 3-1 in Game 3, and you let them reset. And this is what happens. When you have a champion down, you need to beat them. And the Panthers woke up, and they are looking like right now the team to beat in this conference.
Yeah, the thing I have been saying, and a lot of Leafs fans have been saying this as well, and you can make fun of Leafs fans for this, but I am fully in their corner on this one. The Florida Panthers have broken the league, and it's in the sense that they understand NHL officials are not going to call everything. So they put you in a position where they're going to cross the line a lot, and you can get mad at it. So God knows I don't like it, but if that's the system, play it. The problem is in Game 5, the Maple Leafs didn't show up. And you can have that take about the Panthers. And if you go down swinging and the Panthers do their Panther thing, it's a lot easier to swallow. the fact that they just no-showed game 5 is absolutely inexcusable. And all I could think of was this. I know we didn't have the same level of cup drought as Toronto does, but even in the years between 2009 and 2016, when the Penguins underachieved, with the exception of the conference final against Boston in 2013, you looked at those series and went, it wasn't the big guys who failed. Crosby delivered, Malkin delivered, Letang delivered. It was the team around them that didn't show up.
Yeah.
Right now, for the Maple Leafs, outside of William Nylander, where's Austin Matthews? Where is Mitch Marner? Where is John Tavares? You brought up Dangle. He has been saying this for quite a while now. That core 4, they don't have the killer instinct, and it's really starting to show.
If they lose this series, I will say this right now on this show. If they lose this series, I do not want to see a single Leafs fan ever comment anything about Kyle Dubas ever again. I will say it. I don't want to hear that. If you lose this series, you have the core 4. You've had them for a long time now. It's do or die. Put up or shut up time. And I want to see it from Austin Matthews, man. He's been
their third general manager. It is their third general manager and their third head coach. Eventually, there's no one left to blame.
Yep. Eventually, it's on the players to put up or shut up. Austin Matthews needs to answer the call. The core 4 needs to answer the call in Sunrise, but they looked cooked last night. Anything can happen. And again, I'm saying this right now. If they go out in 6 or 7, doesn't matter. I do not want to see a single Leafs fan ever comment anything about Kyle Dubas ever again. It is so tiring.
Putting the Dubas thing aside, I will say if they compete hard in the last 2 games and game 5 looks like an aberration, I can have the conversation. If they show up and they do their part and everybody else around them either doesn't, or the Panthers just show why they're champions, little easier to swallow. Still difficult because you had a 2-0 lead in the series and you blew it. But if they show up in game 6, they force a game 7 and they have a really good game 7, but ultimately don't win, I can hear maybe not excuses, but at the very least that buys them a very little bit of wiggle room. But if they no show again, oh boy, heads got to roll in Toronto.
I'm still going to be a little bit of a hater. I don't care. That's just how I am with this podcast, so, at least sometimes. But real quickly to the couple of other series, Washington, Carolina up 3-1. Washington has no-showed in a lot of this series so far. They've started out games fairly well, but once Carolina gets going, good luck stopping it. Carolina's forecheck has really worn Washington down. The longer this series has gone on, it feels like the Caps are gassed right now. And sure, anything can happen. But Pat, isn't it funny that the team that led the league in shooting percentage is now having trouble scoring in the playoffs? Who couldn't have seen that coming? Again, I don't want to get reverse jinx this because anything can truly happen, but it feels like Carolina is going to be too much to overcome to beat them 3 games in a row. Freddie Anderson's .935. They play a style that is very stingy. Yes. Is it boring? It is. Carolina Hurricane fans are not going to care about that, but it works for them. I think it could be fine-tuned to play a team that has more high-end talent. That's where they've really run into issues like the Panthers, even like the Rangers, for example. But it's working right now, and they are getting contributions from all over their lineup. The Caps need a lot more from Alex Ovechkin. He has not been nearly good enough, it feels like to me, in this series. John Carlson's had a really rotten series. Logan Thompson, it feels like, has even not been nearly as good as he has been throughout the regular season in the first round in this series. But the Hurricanes, they got them on the ropes, and they are very frustrating to play against. And then finally, Dallas. I'm not too surprised. I felt like Winnipeg maybe could have kept the series a bit close because I did take the Stars in 7. But Mikko Rantanen is playing his tail off. You get a hat trick from Kyle Granlund. Good for him. Wasn't going to work in Pittsburgh. I'm glad he's been playing really well since then. But the Stars, they feel like they are way too much right now for Dallas. For Winnipeg. They just got Heiskanen back. If we get Dallas, Edmonton again, it's going to be a really fun conference final, especially also if we get Carolina, Florida again. I think that's going to be 2 really fun matchups to watch if we get those in the conference final.
Agreed. I think the contrast in the West is I think Winnipeg almost blew it in the first round. I think in the second round, Winnipeg's just playing a better team. I don't think the narratives are as outrageous. Dallas is just that good. And sometimes that happens. I know everybody
hasn't even been that bad in this round, at least compared to the first round where he was just flat out awful. He could still be better. They can't win a road game to save their lives, but he hasn't still been as bad, but he can still be better.
Two teams play the game. Fans always want to blame it on one thing. And if you're going to talk about this series, Dallas has just been better. That's really all there is to it. It's not a case of Winnipeg underachieving. Dallas is just that good. And then my flashing red warning sign for the Caps, no pun intended, was their opening series against Montreal. Yeah, they won it pretty handily. But usually when you have the veteran team who's been there, done that, up against the young up-and-coming team, the big team always ends up winning. And the young team will give them a little bit of a scare, but there's always one game where the experienced team kind of brushes them aside and goes, get out of the way. Didn't really happen against Montreal. And that was a big flashing red light for me. So I think Carolina's a better team. And I think Washington has regressed to the mean. And I think a lot of the momentum that they had this season was behind Ovi's goal chase. And since he got it, they've kind of declined. So I don't know if they can pull this one out. And I think they're just overmatched.
I think so too. It also goes with the thought that I never felt like the Caps were that good this season. Yeah. Did they get the number one seed? Sure. But I still never felt like they were a top 2 team in this conference. I felt at best they were the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference. I'm not trying to disrespect them. I just look at this team and it's like there's a lot of players having career years. Logan Thompson has been awesome. Alex Ovechkin obviously had the goal chase. But still, when you look up and down this lineup, outside of Ovi, there's not a lot of true game-breaking talent on this team. Like that's what they're really missing as they go into this next era of Caps hockey. It feels like for me is once Ovi's done, and that might be as soon as after next season, they still don't have like those game breakers. Well, Cole Hudson might change that. He's already disgusting in their system. Brother of Lane Hudson, of course. But I still feel like they need some more dudes. Like they're really good at developing players out of Hershey, but it feels like they still need more elite talent. But yeah, they've been overmatched. Carolina's forecheck is really hemming them in, and the way they play defensively, it's been tough. The Caps have 3 5-on-5 goals in this series in 4 games. It's been really tough to come by for offense so far, but I think that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this episode. Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Friday to end the week before getting you all 5 more episodes starting next Monday. So for Patrick Damp, I am Hunter Hodes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Friday.